All right, we're live. Hey, everyone.
Cool. Hey, Justin.
So let's wait a couple minutes as people trickle in. If you all want to chime in with where you're dialing in from, or if you have questions already teed up, like definitely pop it into the chat. And we're going to keep it pretty organic today, chatting with Steven, just answering questions, and he's got a few things that he'd like to share as well.
While we're waiting for people, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Stephen Pope. I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy, and we're a 300-person agency, and we are a certified PickFu partner. And we use PickFu a lot.
And what are the types of things that you guys do at My Amazon Guy? Like what types of services for sellers?
Full service digital marketing agency. So anything within Seller Central can be in scope. So PPC, SEO, design, that's an important one, and catalog management. And of course, if you get your PickFu designs correct, your PPC team has a much easier job, right? Also, if you have the right main image and you have a higher click-through rate, then your SEO is better too. Right? So just the benefits go on and on. We got a few people chatting in where they're coming in from. So hi to David in Seattle. Paul, hey there. Katie, Oregon. I was born in Medford, Oregon. That's the only fact I can tell you about Oregon. I only lived there like 3 weeks. Terry coming in from Nashville. Kakistan, all right. Kirk in Kentucky. And Assad in Karachi. I've never heard of that.
Canada, cool. Hey, Mike.
Good crew. Well, shall we move in?
Yeah, let's hop into it. So just quick introductions. I'm Justin. I'm one of the co-founders here at PickFu. If you're not sure what PickFu is a self-service consumer research tool that e-commerce sellers use to get rapid feedback on anything about your product, from concepts and packaging to main images and listing copy. And today we've got Stephen Pope here today. He's an experienced seller and also runs his own agency called My Amazon Guy. And he kind of gave an intro, but if you want to do one more for all the other people who just jumped in.
No, we're good. People don't care who I am. They just want to hear what I have to say.
So we're kind of doing it a AMA with Stephen. So feel free to ask any questions about selling on Amazon, optimizing things, how he uses PickFu to gather feedback. But I think we were going to start by jumping into some tests that he's been running around packaging on a product recently.
All right. So I ran quite a few tests this past week in preparation for today. And this is a real world example. And I'm trying to figure out how to beat my competition. Does anybody want to know how to beat their competition? Like everybody on the call, right? So we're going to start with this. This is a redesign of my packaging. And I'm going to give you a little bit of context. Here is what I currently do today. And one of the tests, I did run this against our new designs and had some surprising results we'll show you. But so here's what we currently are. Here's where we're trying to move towards. And there is a strong crossover following in the footsteps of Dr. Squatch here. And so which brand packaging do you prefer? Well, when this first came out, this was our first test. I got pretty excited because we actually won this survey, right? And it's like, wow, to beat Dr. Squatch on brand packaging, which brand packaging do you prefer? Right now, I think the number one thing that I learned from PickFu very early on, the way you word your question is like 80% of the importance on how you run the poll. So even though I've got a poll here that says my packaging is better, that does not necessarily mean they would prefer to buy my product, right? And so if you ask that slightly different question, you might get different results, right? So I think this is a super overlooked thing with PickFu, and a lot of people just flip my light on there. So what's really cool though is if you look at the comment section, right? If I type Control F Squatch, 13 mentions of Squatch in the comments. It literally doesn't even matter what they're talking about. Like, I'm not going to read off 13 comments to you guys. The point I want to make here is that Dr. Squatch has a polarized
Mhm.
brand. Either they freaking love it or they freaking hate it. Like there is no in between on whether you want some furry animal logo on your soap. And so that was one of my biggest learnings early on, right? And if you type in Control F Sage, there's only 3 mentions of my brand mascot, right? Obviously, I've got a kind of a blonde-haired girl, a little bit of Zelda-esque looking hood. That's intentional, right? And I decided that my target demographic was men between like 20 and
Mhm.
40 on the demographics, and so I'm going for that video game nerd
That's
who's
awesome.
played Zelda. Yeah, so I know exactly what I'm going for, but I know that I have to take some market share from Dr. Squash for me to grow. Like that is just the play. They sell their item. So if we go, let's go over to Amazon, type their item in, so you guys get some context here. So Dr. Squatch soap, of course, the autocompletes is crapped out there. So they've got very viral marketing. They've got lots of different products. They've got shampoos. I don't have any of that yet. And here you can see all the variety of products, very in like 28,000 reviews on
Mhm.
that listing, 20,000 on that one. Like these guys are, they probably sell, I'm just making this number up, but I would guess 40% of all men's soap on Amazon. So gigantic. Like this isn't the top 316 in all of beauty. For perspective, these guys know what they're freaking doing. And so the question is can I catch them? So this was the first question. Brand packaging. I won that. I
Mhm.
felt good. If I had stopped the polls there, I wouldn't have learned considerably more information. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go to some other polls we ran. So the second one I went, which product would you rather buy? Well, different results, 48-52. So I did a head-to-head single product, and we called ours charcoal aloe. They called theirs
Mm.
pine tar, right? And so it's not quite
Yeah.
a head-to-head product to product, but it's pretty close. Still selling a black bar, if you will, and probably very similar scent and whatnot. So charcoal aloe, pine tar, and so 48-52. One of the cool things about PickFu is you can see these demographics, right? So version A, I aired younger. So the
Mm.
younger crowd liked to look at the nice little girl, but the older crowd took the
Interesting.
squash. So I don't know if that means older people have a higher sense of humor. I'm not sure. Could be. Don't know. You can also look at the education levels. You get your male to female identities here, income ranges, ethnicity, and I looked at the ethnicity several times trying to figure out what it was, and ironically, I lost the white vote, right? But like won everything else. So that was an interesting takeaway. It's like, okay, she's the white girl, but I lost the white vote. Go figure. We won't talk too much about race or identity politics today, but quite frankly, as a marketer, you kind of have to sometimes. All right, so that was the second test we ran. So I was like, really not 100% sure on this. So I went head to head, but I went back to my original question: which brand
Mhm.
packaging do you prefer? So same question, but a single product instead of a 4-pack. And I actually lost. So if you remember, on the other time I did this, I had the 4-stack and I
Yep.
won. So the data switched on me, right? So we got fresh falls this time. I went 1-1 and lost. So when we look down at some of the responses, funny, right? So let's do Control F funny on this. So 3 mentions of funny on the left. If we do Squatch again, 9 references to Squatch and only 2 references to Sage. So this theme that we've
Mhm.
been looking at, their brand is a cult brand, mine is not. And the reason I keep referencing this cult brand angle is because as a marketer, your job is 10 times easier if you have a cult brand, because you know exactly who you're going after. And that brand identity, that customer identity, will help considerably. So if we go back to their live listing, I don't think they take advantage of it enough on
Mhm.
the listing, right? Like they don't like, okay, so there's this one guy shot right there. Let's go look at their A+ content. They don't even have it, right? So like they're not taking full advantage of this end to end. But if you look at their store, they do it there, right? Like look at this guy. He kind of looks like a squash, right? And so you can see like how much they take advantage of the direct to men. They've got men's soap on it, right? There's a lot of different things as you kind of contrast and compare, right? So it says men's natural soap on the Squatch bar, and on ours it says cold press artisan, right? And you can't really read some of the lower text, especially in search. So the CTR is probably not going to be affected by that. So really the question comes down to, are they clicking on it because it's a Squatch, or are they clicking on it because of the packaging? Those were the things we were trying to figure out. And guys, those for the that are watching, I don't see your questions yet. I want you guys to queue those up. I'm going to present here for a few minutes, and then we're going to dive into your questions and go wherever it takes us. I love live Q&A. So start thinking of those questions and type them in. All right, so here is our original packaging versus our new.
That's a big difference.
And this is the absolute worst thing that can happen, right? You're like, oh, I got this new idea, and then you test it against your old, and it loses. It's only 2 vote difference, right? It's within the margin of error, right? But I lost, and I'm like, frick, gosh dang it. So I had to retool and rethink this. Now the comments on this one were very interesting, right? Like Control F artisan, get 5 references to the artisan comment. Oh, by the way, I chose option B because it has a girl link on the product packaging. Wasn't that exactly what I was looking for, like the target dem? So this is the first time I'm like, maybe I've got a cult brand. It's in the works. Somebody that likes Link and Zelda. But only 1 comment, that's not a cult brand yet. So I've got to play off of that. I've got to like put some hiya or stuff like that into the playing without full on ripping off Zelda. We'll see if I can narrowly thread the needle on that. But people were talking about more natural, artisan, high quality, right? So let's do quality. 7 comments on quality. People thought this is a higher quality product. It's the same soap, but 7 people thought this was higher quality. That's really interesting. I don't know why people think it's higher quality, because they see.
Do you think it's because they see more of the soap?
They see more of the soap. And the last poll that I run, that's going to become relevant. So put a pin in on that. All right. So as we keep progressing, okay. So next, I want to know, what about product layout? All right. So this was what I tested against originally, and this is what we were going to go to market with. And I was like, well, frick, if you can't beat my old product, there's something wrong with my layout, right? So we tested us against the competitor. We tested brand packaging and what would you rather buy. And now I'm getting into the layout question. Very different poll results. And well, it turns out when I tried to test my new product against my old product, I was using the absolute worst layout. That might have affected the voting just a tad, right? So this layout crushed everybody else. We're like 42 respondents picked this one. So Justin, how often do you run a poll and it's just like a landslide?
It's
like
not
this?
often, but you know what's funny is that we see this same layout poll run, and it's pretty much always like this, where stylistically it may look cool to kind of overlay them and do like a diagonal thing, but when you just lay it out in kind of very organized way so that everyone can see all the, especially when there's different flavors or colors and all that kind of stuff, people just want to see all the different options. And this type of layout always wins. Like we've seen so many polls where this is the layout that wins.
I'm not surprised by that. And I've also seen that the more information that you stick, maybe even fudge a tiny bit into the main image, always performs better.
A little overlay or something like that.
I think
right?
it's a major takeaway. Yeah. And so like if you have an accessory, put it in the main image. All right. So that was a really interesting takeaway. And I was, and honestly, this is the one I would have voted for too, which is kind of why I ran the layout test. Sometimes when you send your designs over to a graphic artist, they're trying to make it look artsy, right? And they come back with the one on the left. but that's not what the consumer wanted to see at all. Right. And by the way, I kind of glossed over some of the demographic targeting. We did like test. Sometimes we tested men only. Sometimes we tested men plus women. And obviously that can affect the poll results quite a bit. But overall, essentially, with regard to demographics, men and women almost always voted together generally on my products. And the age demographic for the target that we're seeking, that men between 20 and 40, very different voting versus the younger than that or the older than that. One of the demographics, and I don't know if I can find it on this one or another one, I did education level, right? And what I learned from that is people that were just in high school, had no college degree, did not like my products.
In general.
And that was interesting. That was an interesting takeaway. And I was like, okay, so I'm going for educated. And I don't remember which poll the demographic testing I did went in. Okay, so we did that one. Let's go to the next. So then I reran the test that I boned, right? So let's go back to the test that I boned. So this was the one where I chose my worst layout versus my old product, right? Yep. And I lost. And then I did it with the new layout. And to make it fair, I took the other like layout. And then I came in 60 to 40. Right? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Just a one layout change made a difference. And I was like, okay, good. I can get away with my new packaging. It's not the end of the world. It's going to be okay. Right? And obviously lots and lots of comments to read through, more environmentally friendly. I don't know about that.
Oh, maybe because not plastic, huh?
on version A, but okay, yeah, maybe. All right, so we did that. We did the layout test, and then I was like, okay, we've confirmed the right layout, and then we got two more to go through on this example, and then I wanted to know, okay, well, what was it about my old packaging that people were attached to? Was it just the fact they could see the soap? So I ran this test, and I missed the mark. Right? Like, oh, it looks out of the ordinary. Doesn't look right. Right? Those were the kinds of comments that I received on this one. And I was like, okay, that's an aha moment. So don't just run 3 in packaging and 1 out. People don't like that. Yeah. Well, I wasn't sure how weird it was. I was on to something, but I wasn't on to something, right? Like I was on my journey, if you will. So that's when I finally ran a really good test. Let's see. I think we got 2 more actually. So then I was like, okay, they want to see the bar, but how do they want to see the bar? And I was trying to figure out this, like, how do they want to see the bar? So I was like, okay, well, we'll just put like a 4 shot in the bottom right. And I actually, this isn't how I told the designer to make this. This is just what they decided to do. And I was like, okay, fine, we'll run it. Right. And it won. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So the people liked the packaging on top of the soap bar. And what I do like about this design is that you can see that hole right there, and it's right next to the soap. And so you kind of like, oh, you can see through the packaging, see the soap. So it kind of looks, I actually do kind of think it looks neat.
It adds a little depth to it too.
But yes. So, but then I was like, well, I'm just not 100% sold on that shot. I want to test it again. So I put 4 bars of soap on the bottom, took the original, and 4 soap bars on the top. And I wanted to know, does top or bottom make more sense? Data shows by a long shot that they like having the soap bars in a row, right? So of all of the votes, 25 plus 8 beat the 17. And even if you just ignored those 8 votes and assumed they didn't exist, I was still 25 to 17. And I clicked this button, and this was the moment I was like, oh, that one should have been a head-to-head test instead of a rank order. So if you guys don't know, when you go to create a PickFu test, you can choose between rank order, where they go 1, 2, 3, or you can do head-to-head. I like A versus B. I like B versus C. I like C versus A. And that was kind of an overlook for me. But I thought this was so overwhelmingly that, guess what, guys? This is what I'm going with. Right. And for some of you at home watching this webinar, you're like, frick, Steven ran 7 A/B tests. What the heck? But I believe in this so much that this is going to prevent me from losing money on ads. It's going to help me convert better. It's going to help my SEO because we get some CTR increases. And overall, I'm 100% confident that through all the testing, I found the best main image and I found the best packaging. So that's my branding, redo, repackaging rant. And Justin, any follow-ups on this? Otherwise, I'd love to go to your consumer questions.
No, I mean, I think that was a great iterative process. That's something that we always try to emphasize as well, is that, you know, you shouldn't come to PickFu just thinking it's going to be a one and done test. I mean, especially when you analyze the data on the demographics or the written responses, you usually find a lot of interesting feedback around things that trigger people to vote in a certain way, right? Whether it's environmentally friendly or, you know, I couldn't see the detail on it, like it'll be in there. And that'll give you a good idea of what you can try next, what kind of layout you could try next, especially for the main image. Let's see if there's any questions about this.
Other demographics. So I tested bachelor's and graduate degrees because I was like, after I looked at all the demographics, I was like, this is my target dem.
Awesome,
So I'm going to only ask them. And the graduate stack voted even more in favor of A. And I thought that was interesting. Bachelor's degree gave a little bit more evenly split between A and B there for reference point. Isn't that a weird stat? Like, why would people with master's degrees vote A versus B? Like, I can't even explain.
Maybe it just seems more logically laid out, so like it works with their yeah.
I don't know, but that was interesting. So I also went with must be employed. We got the gender identity. So here's a really interesting one. The male to female ratio on this particular question was very polarized, right? And obviously I had 34 males, which is what I was going for generally anyway. 64% went for A with the male, but the females don't like the main shot. Now I have a men's soap brand, so that's okay. But I thought that was kind of interesting. But the income levels, you can see some of this here. Again, lowest salary demographic not voting the same way. Here we won the Asian vote on A, pretty much a wash on Hispanic and white this time, and black vote loss. Relationship status. So, you know, I was just curious, like, you know, are people buying soaps for themselves? Are they buying it for the person they're next to so they can smell something nice? You know, these are questions that are in my mind. I don't know how I'm going to answer those questions, but I'm kind of curious, right? So I just kind of threw that in. Geographically, though, sometimes you can get different results. A little bit of a wash for me, but overall, C lost in a landslide based on where, except the Midwest. So that's kind of a weird takeaway. And then video game player, I wanted to make sure I understood that. And we went with A. Actually, there's pretty much no difference on this one technically versus this. All right, so I'm going to stop my screen share for a moment. We're going to go to questions here, if that's all right. And Justin, you want to team up?
So, well, Katie just asked one. If your product skews or is for men, why did you choose not to only target them? I love your thoughts on that.
Because sometimes women buy the product for their man. Right? And so I wanted to know, I was like, okay, am I going to push the female vote away when I make these changes? I know I'm selling to men, and that's fine, but not all men are the ones buying this product.
That's an important distinction I don't think a lot of sellers think about, is that just the user of your product is not always the person who's buying the product. And so I think sometimes they narrow in a little bit too hard on their testing, because if, for example, parents are buying it for their kids, well, yeah, kids may like something, but like you need to appeal to the parent, and that might involve less flashiness or a little bit more, you know, explanation about things.
Safety.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing you could do actually is adjust the question a little bit. So you could target women and say, if you were buying a soap for a man, which one would you buy?
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
that's a good one. I'm gonna if you come up with more of those, let me know.
Yeah, the context of shopping, I think, when you're asking a question can be an interesting way to like put people in the right mindset when they're answering the question. All right. Jeffrey asked, have you tested images that are flat, angled right, or angled left? And have you noticed any differences?
I have not done that exact test
Okay.
before. Justin, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about. I think it comes down to what there's obviously not one that's just always going to work. Like you do need to test it. I would say that in general, when you make things a little bit more clear, especially when there are variations of things, then it's going to test better. Like in the packaging that you had, in some of them, you couldn't read the other scents, right? And so that's not going to test as well as one where you could see like all the different variations. Like we had, I saw one where it was a bunch of T-shirts. It was like 5 different T-shirts. They all had different things on it. But when you lay it out like that, you can't tell what all the T-shirts are. But if you put them out, then you see all the designs, right? Like you
Great
need to
shot.
see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so here's a going a little bit different angle here. Here's a test of one product versus a competitor, and we wanted to convince Purador that they needed to change their packaging, and so we took their main competitor, 6436.
Yep.
Right, so you can see like having that word shampoo right on the main image. This is if you're looking for a 5-minute hack today, this is it. Have the word of your product gigantic on the product. This has been proven time and time again. You see Justin nodding his head. Thrasio did this with orange, right? There's so many case studies. The fact is you can't read any of that, and all you need to read is shampoo. That's it. So maybe the blue looks a little more sleek too, stuff like that.
It's a cleaner design. Another question from Carrie. Since the packaging is so similar, did you consider the names of the doctor line were more appealing? So not about the design, but more about the names. Did you test names at all? I mean, you weren't changing the brand name, right? So
I wasn't going to change the brand name, so that's why I didn't run that test. But that's a good point, right? Like, would I have had different results had I changed the name? Entirely
like, does
possible.
Dr. Squatch sound more medically proven or something like that, right? Because he's a doctor. He's a Dr. Squatch.
Yeah, he's got a medical license, but he's also a furry animal.
Let me see.
I wonder how their USPTO conversation went, like their trademark conversation.
What is the first thing you do or look for when you see your design lost?
I try and answer why, and I read every single comment, and I pin the comments that I'm like, okay, that's important. That's important. And then when I go back to the graphic designer and I'm like, okay, we got to make some changes directionally. I think this is the new angle or the new change. We had a lot of iterated process on like what to put on the packaging. And by the time we started running these tests, I was already certain of what to include. So I'll share my screen again and just kind of showcase when we were on my main. So let's go back to, got to go back to page 1 here. So what I was trying to figure out was like, okay, so if we go, let's go to the head-to-head against the competitor. Do you see how we mimic the hole in the package? We were utterly convinced that people liked that. And then really easy to read text, simple, modern sort of feel. I mean, we're essentially using the same sort of template. We figured if these guys have 40% of the men's soap market, they know something about packaging.
Okay. Another question from Robin. Have you tested adding shadows to main images?
I would say I'm generally against it. I think it's distracting and it doesn't add information, but I have not technically run that test. So that's one I'm going to add to my list potentially.
John asks, how did you do your initial product keyword research?
So this is a little bit less PickFu oriented, so I'll go quick on this one. But at my Amazon guide, we're heavily focused on SEO, and we run 4 phases of SEO. And in our research phase, we're trying to figure out how can we index the most keywords. And as we progress through our SEO strategies, we focus on indexing, then ranking, and then market share in that order. And each phase has its own particular thing to do. But I'm a big fan of Helium 10. I like their Cerebra report. And I have 336 employees, and they all exclusively use that software.
Okay, going way back, Jeffrey asked, how many questions are too many questions to ask?
Fill it up. We can always ignore you, Jeff.
Okay. And let's see, KDS, do you always choose an audience of 50? Do you ever have more or less? And how do you decide?
So I haven't had different results from a 50
Mhm.
versus 100. Statistically speaking, I think it's within that one standard
Yep.
deviation. But if you don't have a 60-40 result, then I would say it might be worth looking at that standard deviation, right? So if you're 58, 42 or less than that, then you don't necessarily have an indicative result. Like you don't have what do they call it when somebody wins an election? A mandate.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think unless you're 60-40, I don't feel like you have a
Yeah,
mandate.
it's a good rule. Okay, I think that
Do you see different results when somebody goes 100, 150?
it does typically continue. You never really see it flip if you just add 50 more, because you could add more responses, right? Like you start with 50, you could add it 50 more to get to 100, you could add more to get to 200. But I agree, like I don't think you're going to see a fundamental shift in the results if you're seeing something close, like 52-48. I would just read through the responses, and honestly you probably need to make another iteration.
Or ask the
Yeah,
question
exactly.
differently.
Yeah, they could be responding to a different, they're interpreting it in a different way, right? So the more specific you can be in the question, definitely helpful. All right, Carrie said name of the soap flavor. I don't know if that's a question.
I don't know how to answer that, but we have 24
Okay,
cents.
did you test maybe did you test the names of the soaps?
Oh, did we test the names? I'll be honest, I gave full scent naming rights to my partner. And we absolutely should have tested the names, like charcoal aloe versus pine tar, right? But I actually really like our names. And so I probably wouldn't change them unless I had like a clear
Sure.
mandate on that. But that's a good inquiry.
Yeah. Great. Let's see. I think that's all the questions we have for this section. Do you want to go into the more?
All right, so we got another section to do. This time we're going to talk about advertising. So we spent a significant amount of time proving packaging as well as layout, right? Like if you summarize what we've covered already. So if you're just joining us, hit rewind, look at that later. The next thing we're going to talk about is advertisements. And so I bet you not very many people have thought about using PickFu to test their advertising creative, but it makes a lot of sense, right? Which advertisement are you more likely to click on? Very different. It didn't say buy, it said click on, right? And here we have an 82-18 clear mandate. And I think the reason this one lost is because the person's head is like it's not a very good depiction. But in general, I think putting humans in product makes a lot of sense. Humans in the shot, that is, right? But if we look down in the copy, more informative, apps are perfect. The other picture is weird.
I'm amused and confused.
Comes
That's
up
a funny
5
one.
times.
I'm amused and confused by the lady.
Yeah. So 5 times the lady was weird, right? Now, if you're fighting internally with your staff, you're like, guys, this image is weird. But your graphic artist is like, no, it's not. It's fine. Okay, run a PickFu test. And then you've got like a clear, like, well, according to this, 41 people think the other shot's weird.
Did anyone mention the phone in that one?
All right, let's do Control F phone. 16 references to phone.
Yeah.
So not only was it more informative, it's got an app.
Kind of more clear that
it's the
there's
same
some
exact
kind of
product
app with it.
Yeah, I think it's the word info came up a lot. Well, I guess only 2 times, but the word phone came up 16 times. Yeah, so I think you can find like a word cloud. I don't know if do you guys have an app or some sort of word cloud function?
It's coming out.
I'm not surprised by that comment. Makes sense that it would. All right, so here's another one. So we wanted to know which ad would do better. And this was a throwaway test, truth be told. We knew B was going to win, but we wanted to know by how much. So if you're wondering, does it make sense to use a custom headline ad versus your standard sponsored brand ad? you now know that 94% of people prefer the custom headline ad where you load a custom image. And if you have never heard of loading a custom image ad to your headline sponsored brand, you need to check that out. So this throwaway test, we just wanted to prove that by how much. We knew it was going to win. All right, so here's another one. Which advertisement are you more likely to click on? Here's our first closest test, right? And in here, we changed the text. That was it. All we did was mention unmatched quality and sophisticated design versus 10-slot leather watch box with valet drawer. Everything else is the same. The logo's the same, belt's the same, everything else. So sometimes you can run a text test to see what will perform the best, not only in an ad, you can do titles, you could do marketing copy, which is kind of what we did here, and get some interesting results. So the language in option A is but more enticing, rolls off the tongue better, simpler but more to the point. Tagline, the product feels much more upscale, unmatched quality. Right, so you get some resonation there. B, more information about the product. Description says how many slots. Other optional description is kind of vague. More likely to click on B because it tells me the item is unavailable in all locations. Does it really? Okay, that one, I don't agree with that comment. I like seeing the capacity in larger letters. All right, so it's mentioned in the title of the product too. So you can get very different results on this. This is an example of when the demographics report becomes critical, right? Because maybe you know who the target audience is for this. Maybe it's younger, maybe it's older, right? And if you look at this, do we have a skew? Now, what's interesting is it kind of goes back and forth actually between age groups. Isn't that interesting? So the super young crowd liked A, and then the older crowd liked B, and then kind of mixed results in the middle-aged crowd, right? So that's basically if you were to just ignore the overall data set and you're like, okay, we don't have a full mandate. We don't have that 60-40 vote that I advocated for. Well, let's make the decision based on demographics then. And when we go down, okay, we know that people are more likely to buy $100 belts when they're maybe a little bit more on the older side. However, the counter to that is like, okay, how much older? Are they 45 to 654 or are they 55 to 64? So my take on this particular product, I'd probably go in the 40s. But as you can see, you go down one more slot, it swaps. So this is probably a good case of like, might be worth a retest and rethink or run some more copy options. So a lot of the tests we showed was 1 versus 1, A versus B. We did have a couple ABCs. Justin, what's the maximum amount of things you can
right
test
now it's 8 things
in one go? So if we wanted to run 8 copies, we could run 8 copies to just, okay, what is the best? What is the advocate? And then maybe you get it narrowed down to 2 and then do a head-to-head. But in advertising, you're probably going to want to run more than 1 or 2 anyway. So maybe you run the 8, pick the 2 to run with.
That's what we always.
And then you could do maybe you could do an ad group within Amazon or Facebook or wherever you're going to do it, and then narrow it down based on ACOS. Wouldn't it be interesting to see if, well, A won the PickFu poll, but B won the ACOS? Wouldn't that be interesting to see, right? So that's why you have to take that data and kind of real test it. Switching subjects, I actually did a logo test for my company with PickFu, right? So this is interesting. I tested all caps, all lowercase, and proper case. And this is one of those instances where, okay, we really know all caps is off-putting. Like, just completely destroyed. And as you can see from my sign behind me, that's been what we've been running for 4 years. And I'm like, oh.
I hope you guys didn't take it too hard.
Right? How many of you at home haven't tested your own company logo before? Because we just found out that people hated my logo. They just hated it. And finding out which one's best. And so I decided to go with proper case, and we have a clear winner on this one as well. And the comments on this one, and we did rank choice. So you got A, C, B, B, C, A, those sort of things like that. I'm a teacher, so the capital letters. Right? So, and option C, best choice because it looks the most professional. Font seems more suitable, clean and professional. All right, let's look up the word professional. 18 references to professional. I guess products coming up too. So 7 references of the word professional. So 1 in the A, none in the B. Nobody thought B
Oh, here,
was
Steven, try this.
professional.
Did you know that we've got the keyword filtering down there? Yeah, quick.
Right
Yeah,
here. Okay. Yeah. Actually did not. I've overlooked. I just am a control F freak.
let's try
So
professional because it should. So the nice thing is that it filters all the responses. So then, yeah, you could.
so I just learned something, guys. That's a really nice feature. I like that. All right. So okay. This is kind of a word cloud right
A little
here.
bit, yeah,
Logo,
yeah.
capital.
It's not visual, but
Oh
it
my
does give
gosh,
you the
this is
frequency.
so useful. All right, let's go font. So people like the font of B more, which I'm not 100% clear on. It's all the
Yeah,
same
I think
font.
people. I think font. I don't think people don't really know what it means sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Lowercase mentioned 5 times. Appealing, aggressive. Let's look at those. Who thought it was aggressive?
Highlight probably, but
Okay, I'm
yeah,
gonna.
let's see. A comes off as aggressive.
A is too bold and
Interesting.
aggressive. A comes off as slightly intimidating and aggressive. Who wants to have an aggressive logo? Not me. So I think we had to gang up on that one. All right, let's go back to the questions in the audience. What else you guys got?
All right. I don't see anything new in the chat, but I think we had a few submissions previously. Any other tips on testing hero images against competitor ASINs?
So we showed 3 examples of that today. We showed the Sage versus the Squatch. We showed Peridor versus their competitor. And we showed Squatch versus Sage a few times. And most of the image testing that I personally do on PickFu is the main image. I am so confident that it's worth every dime to run multiple tests on a main image. Now, having said that, one thing we didn't talk about today is the secondary image stack comparison. And we absolutely have run like the full stack against each other. So off screen here, I'm going to see if I can find one of the tests that we ran. Okay, I found one. So I'll share my screen here. So we are like, okay, we're going to make a new stack of images. Which one is better? Well, it came out 25 to 25. So it's like, oh man, we spent all this time making all of these changes and we have no mandate. Gosh dang it, right? And so what we had to do is we had to like run a second test on a 1-to-1 to see like, okay, which image do we think it's the one that's like making this change? And so like we knew that this image sucked and that was live on the listing. And we're like, we really need to convince them that this image is like an auto replace. So we ran this test and we're like, see?
Yeah, that's a great image.
So we couldn't win the mandate on the other test. And so we're like, okay, let's pick the one crappy image that we know has got to go. All right. So sometimes you got to retool that way. I'll keep looking at interesting tests we've run. I think I'm at 76 PickFu tests we've run on our account.
The other thing I'll mention for testing competitor ASINs is, and I know you made a video for us on the mockup tool. I'll just share real quick what that is. Is this showing? Yeah. So we have this mockup generator for testing competitive things. So you can grab a bunch of things here. I think these are Legos, and some people have trouble generating these kind of doctored mockups. So if you want to change all the prices to $100 with 1,000 reviews and 5 stars, you can do that, and you could pop that straight into our poll builder, and that'll let you run tests like this.
So you can see the reviews.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a little bit more context of a search result. You could test out, if you wanted to isolate things. In this case, I think I isolated everything except for the title. So it's just kind of, you're still a title test, but we're kind of putting it in context. So, another way that you can test out competitors, besides just doing the main image by itself or the titles by itself, you could mock it up with our mockup tool, and we'll pop the link into the demo. Let's see.
So I got somebody asked about angles. I found an angle test we ran. So here we have
nice.
the same product, angled versus straight on. Maybe it's not the same product. The more I look at this one, based on the image, which would you rather buy? Clearly showing the angled shot as well as probably the hanging is probably the main thing. Let's look at the word product showed up 31 times. Show, hang. So let's see, 9 people, 8 of them were on A. So seeing it hang. Here's the case example of seeing more information, right? Versus less information.
I mean, it gives you the context of how you're going to use it. It adds that nice depth without doing shadows, right? There was a question about shadows, but if you could add depth to the image without shadows, and this is one way, is with an angle and actually showing it in use. I think that's great.
The one thing I really don't like about shadows is that they make the product smaller because they show on the bottom of the product. And so your cropped isn't as zoomed in. I think that's the biggest downside.
In general, we always recommend people, and I'm sure you probably have something similar, where you try to use as much of the white space as possible. And I think the shadows definitely encroach on that. All right.
We also ran a really bad Photoshop job against the main product, right? Like that's a pretty bad Photoshop job. We wanted to, like, I was convinced that seeing a front facing, but they didn't have the model shot. So we did that was a really bad Photoshop job. So sometimes you can run tests and just be like, yeah, okay.
All right. How many hero images would you have ready to test or rotate in the launch period? And would you pre-pull those on PickFu?
Read that one.
How many hero images would you have ready to test and rotate in a launch period? And would you pre-pull those on PickFu?
So I generally will, before I launch, run the test to decide which is the main image to launch with. Then when I launch the product, if it doesn't do well, I will run additional tests with additional ideas. What's really topical is when I did this for my mom box. So I'm going to go pull some of these tests up that I ran on the mom box. I did $144,000 in 30 days when I launched this product. However, when I did it, it didn't have any sales in the first 7 days. So here is me running a test against my main competitor. And I was like, okay, I know there's something wrong. This is what I launched with. And I'm getting beat 60-40, right? What you'll notice in the main image, it's super messy, right? These are photoshopped on top of. So I was like, okay, there's something there. Let's see what we can do to figure it out. So then I was like, okay, I got enough information against the competitor. I already know I'm going to lose multiple times. So would I rather have a cropped in shot or show more info? Cropped in shot 1, kind of, not a mandate. So then let's see, I ran a couple more of these. So I have to go through a couple polling here. Here's some title shots we ran. We haven't shown a title one yet, so let's do that. Which title do you like the most for a listing on Amazon? 70-30. Now, the reason I don't like running title tests too much is because I know Les is always going to have like a bias, right? So like here you have the bias for 35-15, but as an SEO marketer, it's really hard to shorten a title. But if we look at the word cloud, point, informs, shorter comes up 7 times, not 5 times on concise. Like I'm not surprised at all that a shorter title.
Say that one thing that I've noticed on some title tests is that while I know you're trying to get all the certain keywords in there, but how you order them and make them flow can be a big impact, because people do try to read it, right? Like they're reading it in their head or maybe out loud. And if it feels too strung together, like just comma, like
keyword stuff,
then it's just disjoint, right? Like you're trying to figure out what it is, but you're just reading a list of things.
So if I was going to run a title test on PickFu, I would make sure the length is identical, because if you do short versus long, I can tell you 100% of the time short's going to win. All right. So now here is just, does the accessory matter, right? Near identical shots. I don't know why they made this darker for this, but all we included was the accessory, right? Like, and I will probably never run accessory versus no accessory A/B test again, because it's so obvious accessories are always going to win.
Anything
so that's a
you
good
include,
one we ran.
Put it in the shot.
Yeah, here's a context shot. Right? Can you get away with putting something that it goes on top of in the main image? Well, data shows you might want to give it a try, because it's a clear winner here.
That's great.
Right. So main images, I think it's pretty safe to just go ahead and go all in on it. See what happens. What type of cat, or what kind of cat shot? Or here's another one. Here's when I was trying to figure out no label versus label. This was a year ago when I was trying to fix these products, and 90 to 10 show the label, right? Like, don't go only bars. That was a good test that we learned. Box or no box? Do we include the box in the shot? And a little even here, a little bit even, surprisingly. Type of box shot.
We've generally seen that people do like to see the box or the packaging. I mean, especially if it's nice packaging and if you spend some time on it, then it's helpful.
Here's another example of,
that's a good one,
of like getting too creative, right? Don't do the plus shot. 66-34. They want the boring square.
Yep.
Right. I'll be honest. I did not expect it to win by that much. Really surprising result on that one. We run here. Here's what looks better for A+ content. We've done this one as well. Right. And this one's going to be a landslide 94.6. Isn't that interesting though? This is not one that I would have guessed would be a landslide. I'll be totally honest. Right. So I haven't actually read this one. My team ran this one. So image shows up 15 times, 14 times. I prefer the larger image of the bear.
Looks about the
which
same,
doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
Okay.
I like the extra detail. Image B looks like better fit. So sometimes you get test results or comments that may or may not make sense. That's okay. But when you get a landslide like this, it doesn't matter what the comments say. Go with B, right? Like that's a mandate. In the box or out of the box. And I mean, you get to see the whole product on the box shot. Slight win.
I would have tried the stuffed animal in front of the box also.
That's what I would test next. Absolutely. Maybe even like put the stuffed animal big in front of the box, since it's kind of a
great looking box though.
It is pretty good. So box versus no box. We did that one. Main image test. I don't remember this one. Let's pull this one up. So what is different here? The layout of the charcoal.
Oh yeah. It's got more charcoal.
Yeah. So no charcoal. Charcoal looking different.
I don't know.
60 on this one.
Shadows could probably be removed.
Yeah, there's a shadow right there. Somebody asked about shadows earlier. So people that voted C, appealing to the images were to me compared to the others. C shows off all product features the best, shows more detail. So this is something you'll see a lot in the comments when you run a PickFu test. You're going to see that people want to understand more. Right. So that comes up again and again and again. Okay. This is a little bit different. Which one will make you buy more? Why in the world would less product win? Right? Like I'm at a loss on this one.
Is that the only difference? It's just less. Huh?
There's less product here beating more product.
Larger, I don't know why and clearer. You could see the label a little bit better.
So sometimes if you put too many things, too much detail, you might come up with a
Well,
weird
because those
result
last
like
three are
that.
repeating, right? And so people are probably thinking, well, why do you need to show that same one over and over?
Now here's a supplements test, and quite frankly, supplement companies need to run more tests than
Agreed.
any other category, in my opinion. It's super competitive, and if you mess that up, you're dead. You're just totally dead in the water. A little bit of yellow, won in a landslide.
That's awesome.
Like, isn't that interesting? 68 votes on the yellow. We're just kind of going through memory lane for me here. All right, so I tried to get really creative on my soaps a year ago. Here's some of the past soaps I ran. I was like, okay, what about a 4-shot with the flower in front of it? And nope, original with label still wins. Okay, what about the labels on both of them? Flower shot wins in a landslide. Here's an example. Okay, actually, yeah, I remember this one. Okay, somebody on my staff did this one, and I harped on this one. I like to be tough on the issues, but soft on the people. So you can do this without being an asshole, right? But have you ever seen a more poorly worded
that's pretty
poll
confusing.
question? It's bad. It's really bad. If there are more than one question mark in a poll, here's a great case example of what not to do. Not only did they test 2 things simultaneously, which is a no-no, they also asked 3 freaking questions. So I was like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta teach and show. So I reran the question based on the image. Which product would you rather buy? Simplified it. Tested one thing, basically flower, no flower. Okay, a little bit of layout change. 68-32. That's a mandate. So I know we're coming up close on time here, Justin.
Any final tips
else?
for people that are trying to improve things before Q4?
So if you haven't run a PickFu test yet, go do it today. Right? Costs you $50 to run a basic test. I highly recommend it. I endorse it. I have PickFu all over my website, and it's one of my top favorite tools, and all Amazon sellers need to run it. So that's my little pitch for you guys.
Up your link to your PickFu landing page.
Oh, he's giving me the 50% credit, guys. So you get 50% off. Run that test. Click that link right there. PickFu.com/buy Amazon guy. We were an early adopter of PickFu, and we push a lot of business their way because we're big believers. All right, so definitely go run the test. In case you missed the intro, my name is Stephen Pope. I'm the founder of My Amazon Guy. We have over 330 brands that we work with, just as many employees, full service agency, PPC, SEO design, and catalog. And as you can see from today's testing, we very much are continuously working on a listing. It's not set it and forget it. So if you haven't made an optimization on your listing in 3, 6, 12 months, it's time to make that optimization. So thanks for watching today. It was a pleasure coming on, Justin.
Thanks for being here, Stephen. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day. Bye.